Marlon Brando was still in character when he saw the object set on the edge of the stage. A matchbook, black cover, gold embossing, placed where only stagehands should be, not thrown, not flashed, set down with care, not for him, not yet. The name on the cover belonged to a private club that never sent invitations twice. Brando didn't look down again, because acknowledging it would mean admitting the warning had reached him. This would either make him untouchable in the rooms that quietly ran old Hollywood, or mark the night fiction lost control to something real. Rewind. Los Angeles, late 1960s. A private, benefit night, inside a downtown theater usually reserved for premieres. It wasn't a party, it was a machine. The studios, the unions, the donors, the jobs and favors, everything passed through rooms like this. And the men who owned the gears never appeared on the program. The building itself felt trained. Velvet curtains held smoke. Brass rails were rubbed dull by decades of quiet hands. Ushers moved carefully. Security watched aisles and exits instead of the stage. Applause rose late and fell early, as if permission had to be renewed. Heat from the stage lamps pooled on the wood like a slow spill. Brando could see dust floating in the beams when he turned his head an inch. In the first few rows, collars loosened but ties stayed tight, as if comfort was a risk. A sponsor at the aisle dabbed his forehead with a napkin and kept smiling anyway. The orchestra pit smelled faintly of brass polish and cigarette paper. Nothing about the room was relaxed. Everything was waiting for permission to relax. Brando didn't scare easily. He'd grown up around men who didn't need volume to be understood. Hollywood had taught him how power arrived disguised as courtesy, contracts, favors, invitations that weren't really invitations. He wasn't fearless. He was calibrated. And calibration mattered when fiction and reality started sharing the same stage. Attempt A arrived as if it were routine. A slim messenger in a dark suit appeared at the stage steps, stopping just below the spotlight. "Mr. Brando," he said politely, "there's a request to shorten your remarks. 2 minutes." Brando kept his eyes forward. "From whom?" "A friend of the house. Tell the house to listen faster. He doesn't like delays." Then he picked the wrong theater. The man retreated. The matchbook stayed. The audience didn't understand the object, but they felt the temperature change. A laugh tried to start and died. A waiter froze with a tray of drinks, then turned away. Somewhere near the pit, a chair creaked too loudly. But that wasn't the worst part. In the balcony, someone started to clap out of habit, then stopped when nobody joined. A soft ripple of nervous laughter broke near the bar and died instantly. The sound technician leaned over the board, pretending to adjust knobs that didn't need adjusting. 2 ushers at the back exchanged a glance that looked like a question: do we intervene, or do we disappear? Even the exit sign seemed too bright, buzzing like a warning that wouldn't speak. Attempt B returned with weight. An older man came up the aisle like he owned it, broad shoulders, slick hair, ring catching a shard of light. He didn't whisper. He let the front tables hear him. "You'll take an intermission," he said. "Now." Brando paused, then continued the line as written, as if the man hadn't spoken. The older man stepped closer. "Mr. Brando." Brando finally looked down, once, then up. "No," he said. The older man's jaw tightened. "This isn't a request." Neither was my answer. The band kept playing, but softer, like it was backing away from a cliff. The older man produced a folded card, thick black stock, no writing visible. "Read this," he said, holding it up like evidence. "I'm busy." The man leaned in close enough for Brando to smell tobacco and expensive aftershave. "You're making this expensive. Send the bill to whoever sent you." The older man stepped back. The card disappeared, and the silence after that exchange was louder than any threat. Attempt C came from fear, not authority. The event coordinator, hair pinned tight, clipboard held like armor, appeared at the wing. "Marlon," she whispered, "fast, please. 2 minutes backstage." "Just 2. Brando didn't turn his head. "Who's asking?" Her eyes flicked toward the center aisle. "People who don't ask twice. Then they can learn something new." That was when the rules changed. The room started behaving like it was under inspection. 7:06 p.m. The house lights warmed half a shade, flattering faces, hiding sweat. 7:08, a block of seats near the center aisle filled with men who hadn't been there at dinner, matching suits, empty hands, no programs. 7:10, the bar slowed its pouring, bottles hovering mid-air, then resumed like nothing happened. Every small sound, ice sliding in a glass, a fork touching china, felt like it could be used as evidence. A thin line of sweat traced down the side of a donor's glass and left a dark ring on the tablecloth. A man at the sponsor table kept tapping his wedding band against the stem of his drink, then forced himself to stop. The bandleader nodded at his musicians with a look that said, "Keep it gentle, keep it normal, keep everyone breathing." A stagehand in the wing held a roll of gaffer tape and didn't use it, frozen like the tape was suddenly evidence. When the curtains shifted slightly from the air vents, it looked like someone moving behind them. No one turned to check. Brando continued, but the audience wasn't listening to dialogue anymore. They watched geometry, stage, aisle, that new block of suits, the exits. The matchbook sat near the footlights like a marker pinning the moment in place. A photographer lifted a camera, hesitated, then lowered it, deciding he preferred his career intact. He didn't know it yet, but the room had already chosen a side. The fixer finally made himself clear without standing. Mid-40s, thick hands, calm eyes that didn't blink too often. He sat lower in frame than the stage, but perfectly centered, like the room had been arranged around him. He didn't stare at Brando immediately. He let Brando feel the attention first. Then he tapped the table once with a single finger. The band trailed off mid-bar. Silence dropped so clean you could hear fabric shift as people sat straighter. A woman's bracelet slid down her wrist with a tiny scrape. Someone coughed once, then swallowed the rest of it. Brando closed his pages neatly, like order mattered. He leaned into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said evenly, "we're going to pause the planned program. No apology, no explanation." He stepped down from the stage. Brando's shoes made almost no sound on the carpeted aisle, but the room heard each step anyway. It wasn't volume the audience was tracking. It was intent. A woman in the third row crossed her legs slowly, then uncrossed them, unable to find a position that felt safe. A man near the wall pressed his thumb into the crease of his program until the paper bent. Nobody reached for a drink. Nobody wanted to be the first person to move. He crossed the aisle slowly, not defiant, not rushed. Every eye followed him, but no one spoke, because speaking would mean choosing a side out loud. He stopped at the fixer's table, close enough to be heard, far enough to stay calm. The fixer looked up, tense in the jaw, still in the shoulders. This was the second after confrontation, before response, the most dangerous space there is. Brando held the microphone low, angled downward like a question. "If you've got something to say," he said, "say it here." The room froze. Speaking would expose the fixer. Refusing would weaken him. He glanced sideways at the men behind him, faces blank, posture rigid, then back to Brando. The crowd waited the way courts wait. The fixer stood slowly, smoothing his jacket as if controlling wrinkles could control outcomes. He took the microphone, and you could hear his breath through the sound system. This didn't need to be public. Brando's face stayed unreadable. Then it shouldn't have come into public. A murmur tried to move through the audience and died on the spot. The fixer felt the shift. His power lived in private, and private was gone. He tried to frame it as advice. "You play dangerous men," he said, voice low. "Don't confuse that with protection." Brando didn't flinch. "You confused silence with permission." The line landed without heat. That calmness forced the fixer to choose between escalation and optics. In a room full of optics, escalation was the expensive option. The fixer lowered the microphone an inch. "You embarrassed someone." Brando nodded once. Important people survive embarrassment. The fixer's jaw tightened, then loosened like a decision being made. He handed the microphone back. No threats. No victory, just retreat shaped like restraint. Brando accepted it as if it were a coat being returned and turned away. He walked back to the stage alone. Applause started late and cautious, like people testing whether clapping was allowed again. The band resumed, quieter than before, as if music had learned fear. Brando returned to his mark and continued the show with the same tempo, refusing to be steered. On stage, he hit every cue, but everyone was listening differently now, like they'd seen the wiring behind the walls. After the curtain, the backstage corridor smelled of hot cables and cold coffee. Painted cinderblock. A buzzing exit sign. Stacked chairs rattling when someone brushed past. Stagehands kept their eyes down, tape and knots suddenly fascinating. The fixer appeared again, alone this time, voice kept low. "You made people nervous. They came nervous. That's not how you stay employed. Employment isn't the same as permission." The backstage door shut with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. Someone had left a coffee cup on a road case, and the surface trembled when footsteps passed, leaving a faint ring of brown. Overhead, a fluorescent light flickered once, then steadied, casting a sickly wash that made everyone look tired. A stagehand spoke into a handset and used no names, only pronouns, as if names could be repeated later. Brando could smell face powder and cigarette smoke trapped in costumes hanging along the corridor. The building felt like it was holding secrets in its walls. The fixer finally gave the reason, simple and chilling. A producer's brother runs a local, he said. Union money. Bad pride. A story in his head. Brando didn't argue. He didn't moralize. He wanted you to apologize, the fixer continued. Quietly. Tonight. He could have asked. The fixer's mouth twitched, almost a smile. He did. In the only language he respects. A long beat. Beyond the door, muffled laughter rose and fell, people pretending the night was normal. Brando looked past the fixer toward that sound, then back. And now, the fixer held his gaze for a moment that felt like a measurement. Now I know you don't scare easy. Brando replied, calm as ever. Now you know I listen. The fixer offered his hand. Brando took it, one shake, no squeeze, no performance. A warning lived inside the gesture, but it stayed unspoken, trapped in etiquette. Don't make a habit of this. Don't make a habit of stepping into the spotlight. The fixer nodded once and walked away without looking back. By morning, the story changed the way Hollywood stories always change. Some added shouting. Others added guns. None of it was true. What happened was smaller, and that's why it lasted. A threat forced into the light, and a room full of witnesses forced to acknowledge it. People who lived on discretion suddenly had a memory they couldn't file away. In the days after, people told the story like they needed it to be louder. That was safer for them. Loud stories have clear villains and clean endings. But the men who had been in that room remembered the exact opposite. How quiet it had been, how clinical. They remembered the moment the fixer realized the room had become a mirror. And they remembered Brando's posture, no triumph, no anger, only a refusal to be managed. That was the quiet truth about hidden power. It prefers hallways, not stages. It prefers private pressure, not public attention. Brando didn't win with violence or speeches. He won by changing the lighting, dragging a whisper into the open and letting silence do the rest. Later, when the theater cooled and the last car pulled away, a stagehand found a matchbook near the footlights. He picked it up with 2 careful fingers, as if it might still be warm. No one claimed it. No one asked whose club it belonged to. The matchbook was never the threat. The threat was the assumption that Brando would obey it. He didn't. He let the room watch the men who controlled rooms become watched themselves. And the last thing left on that stage, under dying light, was a small black matchbook, unlit, useless, proving that sometimes the most dangerous response is silence made public.